Daily Greedo, Ya Native, hashtag You Know You're Black Win. These are more than catchy names. These sites and others give minorities and women a platform for protest, a place to voice opinions and frustrations about important issues. The numbers show that we are the most voracious users of social networks, so much so that terms like Black Twitter have become part of the vernacular. Hi, I'm Anqoinette Crosby, host of Vocal Point. On today's show, we'll look at how and why minorities are using social media in large numbers, and why high-tech companies aren't returning the love. Only 2% of tech workers at these firms are Black, and only 3% Latino. So what's going on? We'll find out in just a moment. Welcome to All of Twitter, Minorities and the Power of the Hashtag. Joining me for today's discussion is Harry Wingo, D.C. Chamber of Commerce President and CEO, Tech Diversity Advocate Attorney Jenna Bagat, and Jamal Simmons is a principal at the Rabin Group and co-founder of FlyClick.com. Also joining the discussion is featured guest Haley Sukayama, technology reporter for The Washington Post. Thanks to all of you for being here. But before we kick off our conversation, let's look at footage from a rally that took place here in Washington, D.C. soon after the death of Trayvon Martin. The event was the result of an intense social media campaign.
We are not an organization. We don't have a list of fancy credentials, but what we lack in credentials, we made up for in passion.
I heard about this rally through Twitter. Going through my daily tweets, my timeline, and it popped up that DC was having a Trayvon Martin rally.
On Facebook. On Facebook, I got tagged with the flyer.
I saw it being posted on Twitter maybe about 3 days ago.
I just want to take this opportunity to ask you guys to lift your Skittles up in the air. If you don't have your Skittles, lift up your iced tea. If you don't have your iced tea, lift up a fist. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I want you to...
You know, that's a great example of how Twitter can be used to start a movement. And Jamal, let's start with you. You know, why are social networking sites so popular with minorities?
Well, you know what's happened over the course of the last, 10 years or so is, maybe not even as long as 10 years, is that people have been able to take what they used to do by telephone or by email and now turn that into an instantaneous communication using these social media sites. So what we've seen are young people in particular, and not just in the United States, but all over the world, communicate with each other, organize with each other, and then go out and activate each other on the streets. And we saw it around immigration when people walked out of classrooms all over California and the Southwest. We saw it in Egypt when they were organizing protests there a few years ago. And so now we're also seeing it in the African American community around these horrendous acts that are happening around the country.
Absolutely. Jenna, can Black Twitter even be defined?
No, it cannot. There's been attempts by various different groups, marketing organizations, the media, to sort of harness Black Twitter and define it to a certain extent. But as we know, Black Twitter is a way for social activism and social justice, but then also for fun. So ask Scandal, for example. When Scandal first came on the scene, it was produced by ABC. It had a huge following because a lot of Black American women in particular wanted to support Shonda Rhimes. They wanted to support Kerry Washington. So they made sure when the show was on, they did Ask Scandal and they tweeted. And what that did was show the marketing community like, wow, this is a lot of power. And so that shifted it. So it's more than just just people making jokes. It's more than just advocacy. It's more than just like promoting television or supporting your favorite actor. So it's a lot of things. It's hard to define.
And you know what else Black Twitter does? Black Twitter holds people accountable.
It
I mean,
sure
you think
does.
about what happened with Marie Claire when they were talked about the Kardashians with cornrows.
Right, bold braids.
That's right. People went bananas, and they really realized you can't do things in the country anymore that may offend African Americans without Black Twitter coming down on you instantaneously.
Harry, are you kind of surprised that African Americans have really adopted Twitter and what they're doing with it?
Not at all. Actually, for the reasons that were said, the Black community is embracing this powerful way, not only to speak truth to power, but to speak powerfully. And it's so quickly, and to have it be heard. So the accountability, having a voice, and so it is also for entertainment. But I think really the ability to feel like what you're saying makes a difference, because if you set a spark on social media, the conflagration, not just a fire, but it's that blaze can actually change things, and that's powerful.
Is this the modern way to really get out the civil rights movement now?
Sure. Think about what used to happen on Black radio. Right, and so we would have these conversations with each other on Black radio, and maybe if you tuned in, you would hear it. Now you can have that same conversation with everybody in the country, in fact, everybody in the world at the exact same time.
Or what we had in barbershops and the hair salons, so it's now on Twitter. Let's talk about how to harness what is happening on Twitter into some other type of powerful ways. Can it be monetized? Can the leaders that are on Black Twitter find a way for them to make a revenue stream? I mean, the companies are.
I'm passionate about that because I know that there are social media digital entrepreneurs. There are people in the digital space and online and social media making a lot of money. There's a woman who on Instagram, she just posts pictures of her poses, and she's landed major endorsement deals. She has over 1 million followers. There's a popular YouTuber who has, I forget her name, but she has like a media empire now. So there
Lisa
are
Ray.
people, Lisa Ray, exactly. So there are people making a lot of money on social media with just like, just the following alone. So it can be, but I don't think that our community is enough of us are taking advantage of that, and they should be, because if you think about in the past, traditional media, had little gatekeepers. Like few people decided what we were going to see on 11 o'clock news or after work or your newspaper. That was it. But now we are with social media. We all are. We can drive the dialogue. We can move the story forward.
Harry, as somebody who has worked in the Silicon Valley, you're a former Google executive. Was this talked about in terms of minorities and their impact, and what will have to happen for the tech companies to take a greater notice?
Absolutely. And you have high-level executives higher than I was, like David Drummond, who is an African-American. He took Google public. He's the number 4 person there. And then you have people like Christian Teal, who is working on trying to pull everything together to recognize that African Americans, people of color, have a voice. Then of course, Google+, YouTube, and to what Jennifer said, we have to remind people, and I remember when I was at Google, I would say, remember you can use YouTube, and you can monetize that because you can get paid for people looking at your site. So it was absolutely talked about in Silicon Valley, and now that I'm president of the DC Chamber of Commerce, I remind businesses that they have to just jump in with both feet. You don't always have to pay somebody. You can just inform yourself, and the big thing is just to get started, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Google+. There's so many different options. And I just think there is a lot of money to be made. I want to circle back real quick. What you said about political power, though, one of the most moving things when I was working on the lobbying side, when I was at Google, John Lewis, civil rights icon, and was visiting with him in Atlanta, and in an instant, he totally understood what was the power of all these media, and he said, Harry, I wish that we had this during the civil rights struggle, because the gatekeeper element, he could not get onto television or in the major newspapers, and if we had this now, it's just such a powerful force for changing the world.
What do we think is going to happen once the grand jury comes down in Ferguson, the decision? How is Black Twitter going to react? I know it depends on what the decision is going to be, but any thoughts? Jennifer, you've got your eyes upon guy.
I'm just like, people are preparing for it already. I mean, I know some of the churches have already mobilized, and they're like, the churches down there in Ferguson are getting equipment and water and, preparing themselves for massive protests. And then also you see like the Ferguson Police Department and the FBI, they're calling, so everyone's like really, getting prepared for it. In terms of Black Twitter, I think Black Twitter is on high alert that it's going to come down, and are watching and would essentially looking at the few reporters that are on the ground that are actually tweeting, and so everyone knows and everyone's circulating, these are the people who are actually tweeting, so we want our news from them, because these are the folks who are going to tell the story versus necessarily the broadcast TV, CNN, but these are folks who are on the ground, who are in the crowds and can give us the stories that are true to and unfiltered, so.
Yeah, I was talking to some students here on campus at Howard University, and they were saying that's where they got their news about what was going on in Ferguson, Twitter. And that's where they get a lot of their news. It's just amazing how the shift has definitely changed.
It's faster.
It is.
You go to Twitter before you go to the TV, that's the first place if I need any information, I'll go to Twitter and do a Twitter search
Because your phone is usually in your hand,
Yes, that's true, that's true.
That's the thing.
It's very personal. I mean, my background before I really started doing technology was in politics, and in electoral politics now, you now have, again, there's no gatekeeper. And so people are able to get online, tell you what they think all the time. And so as a candidate, you constantly, I think, have to respond to what the public wants in very real time, or your team does. And it's changed the whole debate. Instead of it being a one-way conversation, it's really a two-way conversation happening between leaders and big companies and organizations and the public at large.
So they're really focusing in on what's going on Twitter?
They're absolutely focusing in, and they're holding people accountable. And we have to be sort of careful, because the voices aren't monolithic, right? There's so many different people coming from different perspectives, and the one thing you have to have when you engage is a thick skin, because people will get after you.
They will. So how far can this go? How far up are we going to go with Black Twitter?
I think the sky's the limit. And we mentioned at the top of this segment trying to harness Twitter, and I think there's a resistance. There was a University of Southern California study that IBM commissioned or paid for to kind of study Black Twitter, but not necessarily as like animals in a zoo, whatever, but essentially to see what are the, who are the leaders of Twitter, and what's the, what happens when, how does it mobilize people, or what is it used for? And there was uproar when that came out, and Black Twitter was like, oh, you're not going to study us,
right.
But then here's the other part where you said we have to be careful, is that when the onion was peeled back, it turns out it was a Black woman actually was part of the team, and it was her idea.
Right.
But when the University of Southern California put the, I guess whatever they do, the formal introduction of the paper, she was left off. So to see a study of Black Twitter and see 3 white men leading it,
right.
That made people go crazy.
Well, this gets to the danger of the internet in general, which is we don't have the gatekeepers anymore, but that means we also don't have people sort of giving us a ranking about what's important and what's not, and doing more investigative pieces immediately. So what we can't do is get into that immediate reaction where something happens and all of a sudden everybody jumps on it, and then we come back and find out later that there's more to the story, which usually, there's always more to the story.
There's always more.
Can I add, the Boston Marathon was a big example of that. When the Boston Marathon bomber, they were looking for that, everyone, people on Reddit were like on high alert, everyone on social media, in particular Twitter, were trying to figure out, to smoke out to see who it is and who was responsible for it, and they leaked the wrong names.
Yeah.
And so they really destroyed a couple of young men's lives because of that, and that goes to your point about how we have to be careful that we sort of police ourselves or self-police ourselves.
Right, Harry?
I agree with that. There is that component of the internet where, because you don't have the gatekeepers, and there's a role where the press typically would research and do all these things, but what's powerful is the other element of the internet is still there. Those who want to follow the link that's supplied, or look at how powerful the voice, or like you can also, on Twitter for example, how many followers do they have? Who is that person? Like the background. So some voices speak with more power than others. Ferguson particularly, we have these opportunities to take the conversation in a different direction. So Jamal, with all the great work you've done on politics, it's so powerful and impressed. Imagine if we were to say, yes, there are things to be angry about now, but are you registered? Let's get registered to vote. Let's make a commitment at this moment for those elements. One thing I'd love to see called out, Emerson Electric is a multi-billion-dollar company that's a couple blocks away from where the shooting happened. Based there. Haven't heard enough about that. So economic issues. Are they hiring people from that neighborhood? I'm sure, as a corporation, they probably do outreach, but what a great place to give them a chance to tell their story, but for other people to call attention to other issues around it. So that's the power. It's got all the elements of the internet, but what's exciting is it's more immediate, and it's people that are right there you can connect with.
And what we're doing on our website, FlyClick, is we are, in our Twitter handle, is we're trying to push out more information for people around entrepreneurship, because what we want is for people to figure out how to make money in this sphere.
Absolutely.
So that we don't see
the tech companies are
African
figuring it out.
Americans
You know,
Yes.
so. Well, let me share with you and our viewers a few Twitter campaigns that have made a splash or are making one now. Hashtag Latism stands for Latinos in social media. The site has weekly Twitter parties on issues important to the Latino community. Hashtag BBUM, an acronym for Being Black at the University of Michigan, brought national attention to issues of alleged racial insensitivity at that school. Hashtag Change the Name and hashtag Change the Mascot both gather support to end the use of Redskins as the mascot and name of the Washington, D.C. NFL team. In a highly controversial and negative campaign, hashtag Gamergate launched a massive campaign against women in the video gaming industry. Conversely, hashtag YesWeCode is a positive movement poised to train 100,000 low-opportunity youth to become expert computer coders. And finally, hashtag If They Gun Me Down went viral and changed the conversation about the shooting death of Ferguson, Missouri resident Michael Brown. Welcome back. So what we want to know is, when did Black Twitter really gain momentum?
When you think about Twitter in general, I think Twitter started in 2007, right? So, you ask someone, how many tweets did Barack Obama send out in his first presidential campaign? One. He only sent out one. And it was on election day when he was trying to get people to go out and vote on election day in 2008. So we really haven't been talking about Twitter for very long. It's only been about 6 years. And so you look back and you think about these things that have happened, like new TV shows and the tragedies that have occurred. But then that campaign in 2012 also, you saw a really big push on Twitter out of African Americans to make sure Barack Obama got reelected.
Right. And then I'd add that when Twitter started making people lose their jobs and lose their gigs, that's when people started to notice, like, okay, what is this Black Twitter thing that got Paula Deen lose her show?
Right.
So, Paula's Best Dishes was one. And then there was a PR woman from South Africa who was boarding a plane, and she said, I'm about to get on this plane, but, I hope I don't get AIDS. I'm going to South Africa. And she said, I forgot I'm white.
Right.
The hashtag was, when did Justine land yet? So by the time she landed, she lost her job. They called her, like, looky here, there's this thing called Black Twitter. They're exploded. We don't want you with our job anymore. So I think that's when people started really realizing and it changed way people do their business. Andy DeFranco's popular. She has an annual writing summit that she does. One day she decided to have it at a plantation, and Black Twitter was not having that. So she had to move it, because of the hashtag advocacy.
And a juror in the George Zimmerman trial.
Oh yeah, lost
her book deal.
Yep.
Yeah. So very powerful stuff. Harry, you want to jump in here?
I just agree with what's been said, and also it's really tracked where cell phones have gone and technologies and smartphones, and so we've seen that really, and African Americans definitely enjoy cell phones and use them very much, and so that's kind of gone hand in hand. As you have more options on this, it's easier to pull out, easier to do things, and what's really exciting is to watch what's going to happen next.
I know.
Like with Black Twitter, with all the other social platforms out there, and it's just getting easier to share things.
And again, back to the question, Twitter and all these other companies are figuring out how to market or, get advertisers to market to Hispanics and African Americans, since we are using those platforms. Again, how do the users find a way to make it beneficial to them? So it's not just a hobby and just not killing time.
Sure. Well, we're going to talk, I think, more about this later, but there's a real question on the table in Silicon Valley, in the tech community, about how do you incorporate the diversity of America now versus just what happened with Black Twitter. What happened with Black Twitter was Twitter just existed, And black people figured out a way to grab a hold of it and do what we've always done, which is, turn weeds into collard greens, right? And so all of a sudden, you've taken this thing that wasn't really built for you, and you've turned it into a communication vehicle, sort of like the international drum that everybody's going to listen to. And so how do we start out with new companies that incorporate the views of the broad diversity of America from the beginning, and not just the views of a small subset of people who live in San Francisco who went to MIT and they now decide that they're going to tell everyone else how they're supposed to communicate.
Right. Do we go ahead?
I think also the onus is on the folks who want to harness Black Twitter, that they hire people that are active on Black Twitter.
And we are going to talk about that.
Right,
Absolutely.
right. Yeah. So one of them, there's a woman. Her name was Brokey McPoverty. She's a really popular Twitter. Like, she can start hashtags and make them go viral. Really, she works for BuzzFeed.com now. So BuzzFeed, I'm not quite sure what the order was, but say, okay, she's really witty, she's really smart. We need to bring her on our team. So versus just trying to say we're going to study these folks and like lab rats and try to figure them out and see how we can infiltrate and market to them and sell them stuff. Why don't we hire someone who's already respected from the community who can actually filter, work through our messages?
Right, Harry?
The other thing that people are just finding just such a rich experience in so many aspects, whether it's commercial, if you've got a business, realizing that you can use this to reach your community in such a direct way, or just for expression. I mean, there's artists, and Jamal made a great point that this is not monolithic. Black Twitter represents just all the richness of our community and our contributions to the nation. If you think about creativity, about jazz, for example, if you want to look at music, just the expression that's there, or someone just to let off steam, connect, just to talk trash about your sports team. It just ranges so far and wide. So I really think those outlets is something that's just drawing more and more African Americans to this. I think of one of my favorite tweets was Damon John, who his fashion empire and FUBU, and now he's on Shark Tank. He came to town, and we did one event downtown, but he went over to St. Elizabeth's because Mayor Gray had worked on calling attention to Ward 8 and how we have these tech opportunities there. And Damon John talked to the community, dressed 250 people from East End, and there were kids there, and he took a selfie of himself. And if you can see the faces behind him, and this was, and of course I took a picture of him taking a picture of, a selfie of himself, and it's just, there's so many ways that people use this amazing platform to just express themselves.
Absolutely. When I was talking to some of the kids here on campus, they were telling me, well, I have 900 followers, I have 1,500 followers. And I said, well, then you need to put that on your resume that,
right.
you're able to have a community and start a dialogue. So I think a lot of people, again, it's about figuring out a way, yeah, it's cool to do it, it's fun, it's a hobby, but, also how do we take it into maybe a professional environment too.
Well, they're choosing actors now for movies based on their social media following. So
really?
So we're now starting to see people who have big social media followings. That's why you see people like Ashton Kutcher and others who are really active, because it also makes them more attractive to a producer. Because you hire someone for a movie, they go and tweet about it, and now all their 15,000, 150,000 followers will come and watch it.
Well, these companies are too, especially if they're looking for somebody to head their social media departments. They want to see, well, what's your social media clout?
Right.
So they're going to look at your Twitter accounts. You're shaking your head, Harry?
I was thinking about YouTube. We were talking about, that's another example. And some folks who are just making their living. And if they really, put content out there that people want to see, there's some phenomenal success stories out there.
And there are companies, their job is to find out who are the teens that have the influence, and they're partnering up with these teens, and they're paying them money to tweet about something, because of their influence. And there's like 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, they're in school and they're making money because they have this large Twitter following.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I know celebrities that have a high number of followers were getting money to tweet certain things, certain products and everything. So you're saying everyday folks can also get in on the
there are a lot of apps right now. There's a lot of apps and various different programs where you can, just as an average Joe, just use a product and tweet about it. And if they, get a lot of momentum, they'll pay you like $10 or $100, so you can make money off of your following.
We're going to take a brief pause from our discussion to hear how some in our viewing area use social media. And when we come back, today's social media poll.
I use Facebook sometimes to keep up with family.
I use Instagram
I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, Flickr, Instagram.
and Snapchat.
I currently have a Facebook, a Twitter, a Instagram, a LinkedIn.
So on Instagram, Facebook, and all that? Nope.
We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
I stopped using Twitter just because I got bored of reading people's lives, and I didn't really need to put my life out there like that.
Too much personal business on there. People don't, you know what I mean? Like, they're not using it for what it's used for, like your business, your social, and everything else. They use it for personal life issues.
To stay on top of what's going on right now. So either in the aviation community on Twitter, or what my friends are doing on Instagram, or seeing what Facebook is talking about.
We really just try to make sure that we use it, one, to communicate our events. We want to let as many people know as possible in an easy way for them to share what activities we're up to. We also like to use it to start conversation.
Maybe it's a little vain. I post a lot of pictures of myself and my friends.
My favorite one is Instagram because I like posting pictures, so I use that to kind of capture things that are going on in my life.
It's nice to use the different types of social media to connect in different ways.
Welcome back to the second half of our show. We'll start off with today's social media poll. Who bears the responsibility to get more minorities in high-tech jobs? The companies, job applicants, or both? Text 22333 and select one of the following numbers to respond. 703-901 for companies, 772-404 for applicants, and 898-364 if you feel it's both. Okay, I'll share the results with you later in the show. So let's talk a little bit more about the fact Black Twitter is powerful. And how do we translate that into getting some jobs in the high-tech field in Silicon Valley? So Jamal, let's talk about that. Why is that not happening?
Sure. I think what's happening is you've got a lot of things happening at the same time. If you look at success, we think about it as a cycle. So first you have people the will to succeed, then you have the getting the skills to succeed. After you get the skills, you get opportunities, and you get opportunities that are rewards, right? And then the rewards get the next group of people to go back to will. So it's kind of a circle that people go in. What you have right now is you don't have enough people getting the skills. In 2013, there were 15,000 roughly people who got computer science degrees in the United States. Of that number, 2,100 were women, about 780 were Latinos, about 540 were African Americans. So 540 out of 15,000 people in the United States of America were African Americans with computer science degrees. It doesn't get better when you go down and think about high school and the number of people who are taking the AP computer science exam. In some states, no African Americans took the AP computer science exam at all. So we've got to work on getting people skills, and then we've got to get them opportunities, not just for jobs, but also to start their own companies. And you look at the people who've started companies, 87% of company founders are white that have gotten funded companies. Only 1% were African American, less than 1% were Latino, less than 10% of any background were women. All of that has got to change.
So we just don't want to obviously hire or get hired. We want to own as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this is one of these fields where with a little bit of skill and a little bit of money, you can go out and build a company that can become a very big powerhouse, but you got to get started in the process, and then you've got to find people to help you nurture to get up through the process so that you can be really successful at it.
Haley, let's bring you into the discussion. And you cover, as a tech reporter, you cover these companies. So we saw the numbers, they're pretty discouraging for African Americans. What would you suggest that should happen?
Well, you know, I think as low as the numbers are, you know, sort of looking at hiring overall, they're even lower if you look at the executive echelon. So I think, you know, one thing that companies have to do is lead by example and say, you know, we have these very qualified people, we should promote them into higher jobs, and then, you know, as you say, then you have role models, you have people you look up to, you can set up mentorship programs, and that's one thing that they could really do in terms of, they could do it now.
And do you think, okay, so let's start with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He pushed these companies to reveal these numbers. These numbers are now out, they're public. Covering these companies, do you think it's going to make them react or act any differently?
Well, you know, I mean, things take time, of course, but I think looking at sort of the strength behind the push to have them reveal those numbers is important. Looking at, you know, sort of the reaction that they got, people saying, whoa, whoa, you know, that doesn't look right, that's not representative of America. You know, I think certainly we could see more outreach programs. We could see, you know, we could see them go into schools and get those skills up, and really broaden also their recruiting pool. You know, they're looking at a very narrow group of universities, and there are tons of great computer science programs out there. So really just, I think the onus is in large part on these companies to expand their community.
Harry?
I say we're right here at Howard University.
Absolutely.
And Lee Burge, shout out to Lee, who's the head of the computer science department. And I agree with what Haley said, and it's definitely going to take shining a light on, including where executives are. And you know, as was mentioned, we also need the entrepreneurial side of things, but the numbers on computer science classes. I'm very excited to be a supporter of the mayor-elect, Muriel Bowser, and I know that this is, I'm actually helping out with the transition, and on the economic development side, we know that technology is critical because to get folks ready for those skills, but DC, we've had Department of Defense and intelligence community, government contracts where people know how to do these things, but we have an opportunity, a phenomenal opportunity to do a sidestep and encourage folks to start getting into networking, computer type issues that are just so important to this industry. One shining example, Antoine Ford, African American from Ward 5, Washington, D.C. He has a company, Enlightened Inc., 162 people. Information technology, he handles the police records for the city. So, you know, that's really an example of someone who is making a difference. And those computer science, you know, there's now many more kids taking the computer science classes in DC. We need to do many more, but we need more creators, not just consumers of technology.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the importance of STEM programs as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would add to that design and entrepreneurship, right? So we talk about design being sort of the gateway to all kinds of other things in this field. My brother was a principal in Anacostia, and he said, you know, there were some kids in his school who were in the 8th grade, and they were struggling doing 5th grade math, but they could design you a pair of sneakers on their cell phone in 15 minutes. What they don't realize necessarily is that that design capacity they have actually could lead to an entire career and a business for them for the rest of their lives to make money. And people are building businesses off of their sensibility about what they wear, the clothes they choose, and what they do. So we've got to connect the dots for people so they can see how they can make money off of this interest they have.
Yeah, that's the point. I want to piggyback what Haley and Harry said about widening the pool. You talked about this ecosystem. You said the cycle. Essentially, that's an ecosystem, and part of that is a culture. And in that culture that's predominantly white, there's comfort there. And so I think that the onus needs to shift. It is important that we do need to get beyond just 9% computer science degree, but there also needs to be talk dually about getting the people who are working in Silicon Valley, who are, you know, it's hard if you have a small startup, it's just you and your friends. But for bigger companies like Google and Yahoo, LinkedIn, Pinterest that have larger staffs, to look within themselves and say, when we hire, do we recruit widely, or are we doing word of mouth recruiting? Are we coming to Howard? Are we going to historically black colleges, universities, or Morehouse? You know, are we going to Tuskegee? Because it's hard, exactly. It's hard to use the excuse to say, well, you guys don't have computer science degrees. You know, it's like, hello, you know, we graduate people every year.
And it doesn't just have to be computer science. There are other things that you can do in these companies: creative, legal.
Exactly.
Yeah,
marketing. Just the business side of it. That's an excellent.
And that's the problem with the 2% rule, which is what people are starting to call it, right? You look at all these companies, LinkedIn, Google, like there are all these places, 2% African American, 3% Latino. That means that you aren't even hiring enough lawyers, advertising people, admin staff. I mean, you can beat 2% pretty easily if you try, but nobody's trying.
Right.
There are companies like Verizon in the tech space, and you know, they have had a great track record of having African Americans you know, included. Pepco is another example. And so you're absolutely right. It's not just the technology side. We definitely need to create more opportunities there, but it's across the board in all the professions that go into a big
and the danger is that people think that they think technology is culture blind, right? That oh, if it's good and it works, and we'll use it, we'll fund it, we'll hire you. But that's not true. Every single person I know of color who's been in Silicon Valley and who's worked, or people who've tried to get their companies funded. We're trying to get FlyClick funded right now. You find when you go into meetings, you're like a unicorn when you walk into a meeting because people aren't used to seeing an African American come in trying to ask for hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a company or to get a job in a major corporation.
Talk about that as somebody who is an entrepreneur trying to get some, venture capital money. Talk about how difficult it has been.
Well, I had a conversation with an African American who sits on a venture capital committee. He actually runs a fund. And he told me that there are less than 30 African Americans in the United States of America who sit in venture capital investment committees, right? And most of them are in the earlier stages of companies. They're not at the companies like Sequoia or the big ones who invest in the Facebooks and the Twitters. So what happens is you walk in the door and there are people who look at you like, well, what is this? Who are you? And there aren't people who really can understand your experience or to help shepherd you through the process. So you've got to build, I would tell every entrepreneur, you've got to build relationships with people who don't look like you.
That's what
because
I'm
they're going to have to be the ones that really help shepherd you through the process so that you can actually build your company.
Or have them part of your staff to walk in.
Sure.
With you.
I mean, and look, and here's the reality about where we are with millennials, right? They're much more intersectional than those of us who are generational Xers or baby boomers. So they don't necessarily see themselves in the same kind of silos that we do when it comes to race and culture and all those things. So we've got to build companies, again, that are the broad cross-section of the diversity of America. You can't build a black Twitter all by itself. You've got to have a place, because black people, after they get done with black Twitter, then they're going to go learn about whatever rock group that it is they heard last week from another one of their friends.
Right.
They're going to be moving in and out of these communities all at the same time.
Absolutely. Harry?
I wanted to put in a plug for the DC Chamber of Commerce, because which Mo says is exactly a reason to join the chamber. So what we do is we advocate. We have advocacy over in the Wilson building for people for good business policy, but we connect people together. So it's a chance, if you're small, medium, large size business, you can be put in front of people who can make a difference, and that's just a really important thing to do. And we teach folks too. So I just really wanted to say that's a great opportunity for people to do that. So.
And you mentioned an example of someone in DC who's doing stuff. I think we need to amplify and elevate those success models.
Yes.
And once we do that, you won't be a unicorn. They'll say, oh yeah, I've heard of people who look like you who've made successful startups.
And make it cool, especially for these kids who know, the athletes, they know the hip hop artists. So let's talk about these all-stars in the Silicon Valley. Okay, so give me some names.
Well, I can tell you, there are a couple people there are a couple people that I think about a lot. There's a guy named Chinedu Icheru who built HopStop, which a lot of people use to it's like public transportation, right? So you go on there and figure out how to use a train or a bus to get around. He sold it to Apple last year for reportedly $1 billion, right? So Chinedu's one person. A guy named Joe Fernandez who created Clout, K-L-O-U-T, tells you your online reputational score, right? He sold Clout for $100 million, a Latino guy. So there are people out there who are doing it. A woman, like your last name, a woman named Wendell Snyder, who is at Apple. She used to run data security at Mozilla. She's now running security, one of the part of the security team at Apple. People don't know this young woman of color's name. These are all the people that you just talked about. They have to become more famous in our society.
Household names. Go ahead, Harry.
Andre Gudger, who had a company called Solvern, and he sold it to another black man, Maurice Tozet, who has TCS. Maurice Tozet was 10 years ahead of me at the Naval Academy, but he has a company out of Annapolis. He was doing cloud computing back when they called it application service providers, but he bought Andre Gudger's company. Andre went on to be head of DoD small business. It was a cybersecurity company, by the way. And now that company is a core part. You talk about high tech. They do, teaching these units at NSA. If you're going to actually do military side stuff on the networks, I mean, the most complicated high-speed stuff you can imagine, Andre Gudger's company was the core of that. And he recently went over to DoD to have a high-level position regarding research for DoD, filling in for Reggie Brothers, Dr. Reggie Brothers, who is an African-American who has now gone on to be Undersecretary for Science and Technology at DHS right in town. He was an optical engineer, BAE Systems. So those are some local names. And again, going back to the point about what DoD and the intelligence community has done around this region, one quick plug too for why I have, where we should be collecting our voices as African Americans. Military service, the opportunity to serve in the government, including actually Muriel Bowser's campaign for the local government. You've got companies like Octo, or you could do, or DC Cable. You can do a lot of high-tech things, just right here. But if we realize that we can ride that for grants, National Science Foundation, interest, East End, and then those people can take what they learn and then start their own companies because they'll be at the cutting edge. Let's not forget that Vint Cerf, father of the internet, and I was privileged to work with him while I was at Google. He started out at 1974. He was writing the code for like internet stuff while he was at DARPA. That's DoD.
You know, there's an African American woman we just all heard recently about the mission to land a probe on a comet that was going by, that's 3 million miles away. An African American woman ran that for NASA, the U.S. portion of that. And I can't leave out Denmark West. So a lot of young people are into music and they're into videos. Denmark he ran digital for BET. He was at Viacom and it was a digital at Viacom. He'd been at Microsoft. He is really one of the all-stars in this sphere. He's in his 40s and he is probably one of the real uncles, in this area who's shepherding through new people and new companies.
And Tristan Walker, who was with Foursquare, and now he's doing his own thing too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have one example. I can't remember. I don't remember the guy's name, so that's not helpful. But for the fact that Instagram is big, and there's a function on Instagram. People build on top of existing social media platforms, and they'll do off-brand sort of things. So repost whiz is like if you want to repost or reshare someone else's photo without having to download it on your computer and upload it again. So the guy who did repost whiz is a black guy, and I just follow the hashtag because when you download his app, he forces you to follow his account, and then I was just surprised, so we need that sort of stuff, more amplification of the fact that there are black people in social media, doing social media platforms, building on top of social media platforms, and who are African American or Hispanic.
How many young kids play Madden, on their game consoles? Madden was redesigned by an African American guy who came in after the first year or so when it wasn't doing so well, redesigned it and turned it into one of the biggest games that there is.
No one knows that though.
No.
But nobody knows it. And it's our job to sort of make those people famous. When I go in front of large civil rights groups and I give speeches about politics, one of the things I say now is that next year I'm happy to come back, but bring an entrepreneur up here and let them tell you about what it is that they're doing.
I'd actually like to give a quick shout out to Angel Rich. She's from Ward 7. So my parents moved off Texas Avenue out to Maryland when I was 5, but Angel was raised in Ward 7, and Wealthy Life. I think it's a gamification company. She just got some funding, for something I think with the local education system here in DC. It might be a DCPS grant. I have to check. But anyway, Angel Rich, she's got a couple people on her team, and she's making her way as an entrepreneur. And it's just examples like that. Are just fantastic. We need more people. And Antoine Ford, of course, Enlighten, great example in the city.
Yeah.
All great examples. Do you feel like a pioneer?
Maybe. We'll see how far we get. I think what I feel like is there's got to be a real social change among young people. When I look at this, I think all the things that people are interested in, the games they like to play, the music they like to listen to, the apps they download, and we download more apps. We have the likelihood to download more apps than any other community. What we've got to do, though, is then turn that interest that we have into something that is going to generate income. And we've got to make that real for people. They need real-life examples, credible messengers, people who look like them, who come from communities that they come from, and they can see and touch and say, oh, you know what? I can do something like that. I can make money at this, too.
Right. Haley, how do we get these companies to see why it's so important to diversify? I mean, you look at where the nation is going. I mean, why can't we get them to see that it's a must?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely people coming up through the companies who are seeing it, and some of it is going to take time. But I mean, I really think you just got to keep talking to them, and kind of to tie it all together, really use those communities that you have on those social networks and focus and really talk to them. Authenticity speaks, and so especially on social media. And so if you can, galvanize around that and really push, then they got to listen at some point.
Are you kind of an insider? What was it like being a black man in the Silicon Valley?
Well, one of the things is you just look around, and there's just definitely need more people of color. One thing Google was trying to do, though, was to get more people to come in, and so there's been outreach to HBCUs, and I would lean into that opportunity to go travel, talk about Google, but and including things like computing in the core, an effort to really get schools around the nation to teach high school, middle school, get kids turned on to computer science. But as far as being on the inside, I mean, it's phenomenal company. I got there in 2008. There was about 20,000 people, and you know, by the time I left 5 years later, it was over 50,000. And just to see just all that energy, the things, I mean, it's just a range of experiences. But I think really I just felt like, wow, I have to tell like my community, like you have to like shift to this. One of the most powerful moments for me, just, you know, all the things that you saw, like knowing where technology was going, being exposed to it. I just felt like saying, look, I know we can do this, but if I wanted to give like an example from the black experience, think of how many black masons there are, like stonemasons. Most black families have a stonemason. We need digital masons. The same way that we figured out how to build things with, you know, with stone and wood, we can do the same thing with bits and computers. But as far as being on the inside, it was just a phenomenal experience, but it saddened me that we, you know, don't have more African Americans in the industry.
Great. Well, we'll hear from our studio audience in just a moment, but right now, more comments from the streets.
I use Facebook, LinkedIn, and email, and that's it.
Mostly Facebook. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, I guess, like the big three. And then kind of the proprietary platforms that some of them have. Like I use Vine a lot from Twitter, or the video feature of Instagram.
I think Twitter is my favorite as far as, once again, that organizational level goes. You can get out a concise message to a lot of people.
On Facebook, like 1 hour a day maybe, like half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the night, that's it. And then LinkedIn, like I use it maybe twice a week.
I think there's different purposes. I think I like social media, how it just kind of informs me of what's happening, like in a visual kind of media.
I talk to my friends that I'm not able to get in contact with, or you know, see on a regular basis.
I also kind of like the introspective art from it. I mean, a lot of people take interesting shots of the neighborhoods I walk by, and I like seeing their perspective on it.
Well, now we'd like to hear from our studio audience, so please state your name and briefly state a question or comment.
Hello, my name is Eric Jackson. I'm a freshman over here at Howard University. Over the summer, I founded a nonprofit organization called Operation Help the People in Kingston, Jamaica. And within 3 days, using my hashtag OHTP, we were able to reach out to over 300 youth and get them to volunteer for our summer program. Now we're moving strong within 21 weeks of existence with over thousands of youth throughout the country. I guess my question to you would be, is social media now more effective and more relevant than TV advertising?
Question. Who wants to take that?
I'll take that one.
Go
I think
ahead,
that's an excellent question because you find now, I went to journalism school, and when I was in journalism school, we had 4 different tracks. You had PR, you had broadcast media and television, and the PR track, what people are learning now, or what they learned when I was in school, they have to go back and learn hashtag journalism, hashtag PR, promoting campaigns, promoting their clients through using hashtags versus traditional advertising. It's not outdated yet, but it's a piece of the puzzle. It's like you can't have a campaign for any, whether it's a product, whether it's a nonprofit you want to promote, without having a hashtag. And congratulations to you for founding your nonprofit, for your success. I think that's excellent. I love hearing stories like that. All the good luck to you in the future. Anyway.
There's another thing people are starting to do now. They're looking at, you see this on Scandal, where people are talking about the 2-screen experience, right? So they're looking for ways to connect what's happening on shows and in commercials with what you're doing. Because what we find is that most people are sitting there watching television while they're also like doing this. So so one of the things that someone will say is, well, watch this commercial break to get this special code, and then you can use that special code and use it on Twitter, and then whatever you're able to get some sort of a discount out of that, right? So then that gives you incentive to sit there and watch the commercials. Because what do most of us do is we DVR things and we fast forward through the commercials. So advertisers are trying to get you hooked so you stay there and don't switch.
And all shows have hashtags now.
Yeah.
You know, it's at a little corner, you have the hashtags. They want you to follow along. And Scandal was able to build a momentum and even and now what you see now is the advertising agencies are also watching on Twitter the hashtag usage. So not just measuring Nielsen ratings, they're not just measuring that, they're also measuring to the extent that the hashtag was used while the show was on. So definitely hashtag is part of marketing now, and it will forever be. And then maybe it's, at some point even surpass traditional advertising.
Eric, I think you need to use both, and so they're both powerful. But all this is changing, even as we speak. So keeping up with that, and congratulations on your nonprofit. TV still is very powerful. As we can see, our viewers are watching this. But as has already been said, there is a combination. It's a piece of the puzzle, and it's just you can be creative. If you've already started this, but you can reach people through both mediums and figure out the optimal way to, and even be a pioneer in using them together.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just on the point of nonprofits, there are a bunch of great nonprofit leaders who are out there who are focusing on how do we get more young people into this. So since you brought it up, I'll just name a couple of them. Kimberly Bryant runs a group called Black Girls Code, which is fantastic. It's nationwide now. A friend of mine, Reshma Sajani, who runs something called Girls Who Code out of New York, and it's now in Detroit and Silicon Valley and other places. And then we talked about Tristan Walker, but he ran something called Code 2040. And Code 2040 is getting people jobs out in Silicon Valley. And then lastly, there's a great group out there also called Smash Academy, which is getting young African American men and then taking them to get summer internships, even in high school, where they're spending summers on campus or at Google, and then on campus at Stanford, and then they go into Google and then get jobs. So I think people are starting to focus on this, and the more you can do, even in the nonprofit sector, will help change the way this trajectory works.
Thanks for your question, and good luck to you. We have time for one more quick question.
Hello, my name is Imani Blackman, freshman at Howard University, and also the author of The Future Starts Today, a Young President's Guide for Financial Independence. My statement was, how do we amplify, I guess, this new black entrepreneurial executive leader? I know normally in, I guess, by press and also on the news, we want to amplify, I guess, the negative side of black people, I guess, shooting and anything that's going on, like, I guess, negatively in the black community, like Ray Rice hitting, the girl. But when do we really amplify something that's positive? Or is it mostly what sells and what doesn't? Or is that not how we really want to be seen in that type of way? Or like, what can we do to really amplify?
Thanks for your question. Jennifer, you want to take it?
I think that what I said at the beginning of the show is the fact that social media is driving the perception of the African American and Hispanic people in the United States. And you mentioned hashtag activism. We are now, stories that may not have been on the editor's list of stories they're going to cover, they're looking to Twitter to be like, what are the people on Twitter thinking about? What are the hashtags that are trending? If your hashtag was trending and someone needed to do a story, they might find your hashtag and do a story on you. That's going to amplify your message. If you have a company and you want people to know about your company so you can get funding, so people who are watching a certain hashtag, you may recognize, like DC Tech, for example, is where all the DC Tech people, whether it's venture capitalists, whether it's people in the DC area that's in tech community, they're all watching that hashtag. So you're in DC, you have a tech company, you want to make sure all of your texts, all your tweets that mention your company has DC Tech in the hashtag. And that's how you control your message and your image.
Okay. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to stop there. Great discussion, you guys. Earlier, we asked our studio audience who bears the responsibility to get more minorities in high-tech jobs, the tech companies, the job applicants, or both? Well, 35% of you said the companies, and 35% said applicants, and 30% said both. Well, thanks again to our audience and our great panel, Jamal Simmons, Jenna Bagat, and Harry Wingo. Also, our special guest, Haley Sukiyama. And as always, thanks to you at home for tuning in. I'm Anqoinette Crosby, and until next time, I'll save you a seat.
This program is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.